What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. This video is going to give you a detailed origin story for FBA. Remember when I brought up the Tanton Corporation? It's really the Tanton Group. I shouldn't have said corporation. The Tanton Group. That's how they label themselves. This will give you a breakdown of how it's all connected. ADOS, FBA. This is serious stuff right here. This is legitimately, this is their lineage. This is the lineage of the xenophobic hate group that's called FBA, that is designed to deunify and to separate Africans from each other during a time in which we are connecting and unifying. So if you really want to know and want to be armed with the information, watch this video. Anyway, that's all I got to say. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
Have you heard of ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery? How about FBA, Foundational Black Americans? I first encountered the term FBA in the comment section of one of my YouTube videos on the Harlem Renaissance. One comment read, "The FBA families didn't migrate anywhere in the United States. They simply moved from one part of their country to another, and the term African American is null and void." I've noticed the term used by more and more Black Americans over the last few years. So what's the deal behind these terms, and what are they really about? To understand ADOS and FBA, one has to be familiar with their complex interrelationship with the Tanton group. While ADOS and FBA primarily advocate for lineage-based reparations and identity for descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States, the Tanton Group is a network of organizations dedicated to severely restricting immigration, driven by a white nationalist agenda. A direct organizational link exists through Yvette Carnell, a co-founder of ADOS, who served on the board of Progressives for Immigration Reform, a group explicitly aided by John Tanton. Beyond this direct connection, significant ideological parallels exist in their shared anti-immigrant rhetoric and the principle of lineage-based exclusivity, which, despite differing stated motivations, contribute to similar outcomes of restricting immigration and fostering internal divisions. There are strategic implications where the rhetoric and actions of ADOS and FBA, whether intentional or not, align with and potentially advance the broader political objectives of the Tanton Group, particularly concerning voter disengagement and reduced opposition to anti-immigrant policies within the Black community. This convergence underscores how seemingly different political movements can contribute to a larger political ecosystem where extremist ideologies may gain traction by leveraging complex social dynamics. The American Descendants of Slavery, ADOS, is a political movement and term referring to descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States, primarily advocating for reparations for systemic injustices of slavery. The movement and term originated from the hashtag ADOS, co-created by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. Foundational Black Americans, FBA, is a lineage-based designation rather than a formal organization, identifying direct descendants of formerly enslaved Black Americans in the United States. This concept emphasizes a unique claim to foundational status and reparations, distinguishing them from other Black people who do not descend from the formerly enslaved in the United States. And then the Tanton Group refers to a network of organizations founded by John Tanton, a figure identified as a white nationalist and eugenics proponent. This network dedicates its efforts to severely restricting immigration to the United States, fundamentally driven by a desire to maintain a, quote, European American majority, end quote. Key organizations within this network include the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, and Numbers USA. The ADOS movement emerged from the hashtag ADOS, co-created by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. At its core, the ADOS movement demands reparations for the system of slavery in the United States, specifically for American descendants of slavery. Their vision extends to a, quote, New Deal for Black America, which includes reparations and a substantial government-funded tax credit ranging from 50 to 75% for college expenses for ADOS individuals. A fundamental aspect of the ADOS identity is the call for a unique ethnic designation on census forms and college applications. Proponents assert that ADOS individuals and other Black people are not the same. This emphasis aims to redefine the discourse around African American identity, shifting it from a broad racial category to one centered on specific lineage. A distinguishing feature of the ADOS movement is its explicit focus on Black Americans who descended from U.S. slavery and its stated disagreements with Black immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean. ADOS underscores this distinction by demanding separate census designations for ADOS and Black immigrants. While the movement supports affirmative action for American descendants of slavery, it explicitly opposes such policies for all other ethnic minorities. Supporters of the ADOS movement have publicly criticized immigration, and their rhetoric has an anti-immigrant sentiment despite their denials of xenophobia. Their platform advocates for specific policies that would remove Black immigrants from affirmative action programs and impose limitations on visas for African immigrants. Critics contend that these proposed policies would effectively relegate Black immigrants to a second-class citizen status. The ADOS movement stance on immigration, which seeks to differentiate and disadvantage Black immigrants, creates an internal division within the broader Black community. This viewpoint aligns the movement with a nativist perspective, even if its stated motivation is to secure resources for a specific lineage. This othering of immigrants, including those of African descent, echoes the broader anti-immigrant sentiment found in other movements. The practical effect of their immigration stance, limiting immigration and disadvantaging immigrant groups, converges with the objectives of groups with explicit anti-immigrant agendas. This convergence of objectives with other anti-immigrant groups suggests a potential for ADOS's specific demands to be co-opted or amplified by forces with broader anti-immigrant goals, as their rhetoric contributes to a climate of skepticism towards immigration. While ADOS leaders Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore identify as anti-Trump and lifelong Democrats, the group has frequently attacked the Democratic Party, urging Black voters to seek alternative political avenues. Notably, Pro-Trump and right-wing figures such as Ann Coulter and Ali Alexander have utilized the ADOS hashtag. In addition, Yvette Carnell once appeared in a MAGA hat, which she later dismissed as a joke. Critics, including civil rights leaders, have accused Carnell of engaging in xenophobic birtherism against Kamala Harris and promoting a black purity test described as nothing but self-hate cloaked in black self-love. A study, though subsequently retracted due to its methodological concerns, concluded that ADOS functioned as a, quote, disinformation operation that served the interest of the political right by discouraging black people from voting, end quote. Other commentators have characterized ADOS supporters as trolls and a mix of black pro-Trump racists. ADOS rhetoric is amplified on social media by bots, trolls, and fanatics. These tactics are similar to documented voter suppression campaigns, including the Russian disinformation efforts in 2016 that sought to weaken the black vote and infiltrate unified social justice movements. The persistent criticism that ADOS functions as a disinformation operation, potentially serving right-wing interests by discouraging black voter participation, represents a significant causal connection. A reduction in black voter turnout or a shift in their traditional voting patterns away from the Democratic Party would generally benefit conservative or right-wing political agendas. This connection implies the ADOS movement, regardless of its internal intentions, has a strategic utility for advancing broader political objectives, particularly those of the political right. The Tanton Group's agenda, which is deeply intertwined with right-wing politics and aims to restrict immigration, would indirectly benefit from a less engaged or more fractured black electorate, as this reduces organized opposition to their policies. The documented amplification of ADOS narratives by external, potentially malicious actors, bots and trolls, further support the idea of a deliberate strategy to leverage ADOS's distinctive rhetoric for political gain. This dynamic illustrates how seemingly distinct movements can contribute to a larger political ecosystem where the Tanton Group's influence isn't solely through direct lobbying. It also benefits from creating a political climate where anti-immigrant policies face less resistance, partly due to internal divisions within potential opposition groups. Foundational Black Americans, FBA, is a, quote, lineage-based designation, end quote, rather than a formal group or organization. It specifically refers to the over 43 million Black Americans who are direct descendants of the freedmen, the formerly enslaved Black people emancipated in the United States. This lineage is a unique and unbroken connection to the foundational builders of the nation. Those who subscribe to the FBA concept believe it is vital to distinguish so-called foundational Black Americans from individuals born in Africa or other people of African descent whose ancestors do not descend from the formerly enslaved in the U.S. A key belief among many foundational Black Americans is that reparations paid by the United States government should be exclusively for those whose ancestors were held in bondage in the U.S. based on their claim as the, quote, foundational builders of this nation. FBA is referred to as the, quote, latest iteration of black othering, end quote, having been preceded by the concept of ADOS. Both are black identity groups that focus on lineage and the pursuit of reparations. Critics argue that the FBA perspective, quote, resembles the MAGA program not only in its othering of immigrants, but also in its exclusionary nature, drawing parallels to European groups that historically conceptualized white privilege to reserve it for exclusive groups. Critics say that the FBA concept is, quote, short-sighted, selfish, and exclusive, end quote. It is the betrayal of Pan-Africanism and the documented historical practice of black people coming together as one, regardless of tribal, ethnic, or national affiliations. Research indicates that FBA rhetoric, quote, tends to suggest a lean towards conservative ideology, aligns with right-wing and particularly alt-right talking points, and potentially contributes to disengaging black Americans from the voting process, drawing comparisons to Russian disinformation tactics aimed at weakening support for the Democratic Party. The FBA concept emphasizes a narrow lineage and advocates for exclusive benefits, contributing to the fragmentation of black political identity and solidarity. This internal division, particularly the othering of immigrants, mirrors the Tanton Group's broader anti-immigrant agenda. The alignment of FBA rhetoric with right-wing and particularly alt-right talking points suggests that external political forces are leveraging division within the black community. Let me say that again. The alignment of FBA rhetoric with right-wing and particularly alt-right talking points suggests that external political forces are leveraging division within the black community. The FBA framework identifies itself by specific lineage, the descendants of freedmen, and advocates for reparations exclusively for that group, explicitly distinguishing itself from other black people, including immigrants. This framework creates a strict in-group, out-group dynamic within the broader black community based on specific historical experiences in the United States. This exclusionary approach, particularly the othering of immigrants, makes FBA's rhetoric compatible with and potentially beneficial to broader anti-immigrant movements like the Tanton Group. While FBA's focus is on Black American historical claims, the effect of their stance on immigration aligns with the Tanton Network's goals of reducing non-white populations. The explicit comparison of FBA's perspective to the MAGA program and its alignment with right-wing and particularly alt-right talking points strongly suggests a strategic convergence where FBA's internal divisions serve external political agendas. This dynamic illustrates how identity-based movements can become co-opted, even those rooted in legitimate historical grievances. Their rhetoric can also become amplified to serve agendas fundamentally different from their stated goals, especially when those agendas benefit from internal divisions within targeted communities. John Tanton, a retired Michigan ophthalmologist, is widely identified as the, quote, racist architect and founding father of the modern anti-immigrant movement in the United States. He passed away in 2019. His core ideology was deeply rooted in white nationalist beliefs and eugenics. Tanton stated, quote, For European American society and culture to persist requires a European American majority, and a clear one at that. Tanton's views evolved from an initial interest in population control and environmental conservation. When the indigenous birth rate in the U.S. fell below replacement levels, his preoccupation shifted to immigration, which he viewed as the primary cause of population growth, leading him to focus on racial demographics. He notably promoted the lurid and racist novel The Camp of the Saints, which depicts an invasion of the Western world by swarthy hordes of Indian immigrants. His private correspondences reveal his deep ties to the white nationalist scene, including communication with Holocaust deniers, former Klan lawyers, and leading white nationalist thinkers of the era. He also expressed alarm about a Latin onslaught and questioned the ability to educate Latino immigrants. Tanton established a sprawling network of organizations to advance his anti-immigrant agenda, often funded through U.S. Incorporated, his philanthropic foundation. The Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR. Founded in 1979 by Tanton, FAIR is his flagship organization. Its primary mission is to limit immigration to the United States and set immigration quotas at the lowest feasible levels. FAIR accepted over $1 million from the Pioneer Fund, a white supremacist foundation devoted to, quote, race betterment, end quote, through eugenics. Due to its ties to white supremacists and racist statements, FAIR has been designated as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It actively seeks to overturn the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which ended a decades-long racist quota system. The Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, established in 1985 as a spinoff from FAIR, CIS claims to be an impartial think tank. However, the Southern Poverty Law Center has designated it as a hate group due to its history of circulating racist writers and associating with white nationalists. CIS' agenda is severe immigration restriction, advocating for policies like attrition through enforcement, making life difficult for undocumented immigrants to encourage self-deportation, and nationwide e-verify. Then you have Numbers USA. Founded in 1996 by Roy Beck with Tanton's assistance, Numbers USA advocates for reduced legal and illegal immigration. It aligns its mission with recommendations from the U.S. Commission on Immigration Reform and the President's Council on Sustainable Development, focusing on population stabilization and reduced job competition. Then you have the Progressives for Immigration Reform, PIR. This organization is known as the, quote, fake progressive, end quote, group that was aided by John Tanton. Significantly, Yvette Carnell, co-founder of the ADOS movement, served on its board. Other affiliated groups within the Tanton network include the Immigration Reform Law Institute, U.S. English, the Social Contract Press, Pro-English, 21st Century Fund, and Population Environment Balance. The overarching goal of the Tanton network is to implement policies that restrict immigration as much as possible to maintain a clear European American majority in the United States. They advocate for significantly lower legal immigration numbers, stricter enforcement measures against illegal immigration, and policies that promote attrition through enforcement to encourage self-deportation. Specific policy stances include opposing birthright citizenship, supporting ideological screen tests for immigrants, and actively campaigning against sanctuary cities. Their messaging frequently links immigration to perceived negative impacts on jobs and wages, including for Black Americans and Latino citizens, environmental concerns, and strain on infrastructure. The Tanton network has received substantial funding, including millions of dollars from wealthy donors like Cordelia Scaife May and foundations such as the Pioneer Fund, which is known for promoting eugenics. These groups have profoundly shaped the immigration debate in the United States, with their principles frequently testifying before Congress and exerting significant influence on policy at the highest levels, including within the Trump administration. Tanton's Political Action Committee, managed by his wife, Mary Lou, has donated thousands of dollars to elected officials, further extending his network's political reach. The Southern Poverty Law Center has officially designated FAIR and CIS as hate groups due to their racist origins, white nationalist ties, and promotion of eugenicist views. The Tanton Group's enduring influence, despite its documented white nationalist and eugenics roots, highlights the effectiveness of its strategy to legitimize anti-immigrant sentiment. This legitimizing of anti-immigrant sentiment is achieved by framing its agenda through seemingly neutral lenses such as environmentalism or economic impact, and by establishing a network of organizations that appear distinct but share a common racially motivated goal. It demonstrates a sophisticated long-term strategy to reshape American demographics and society. Despite their extremist foundations, these organizations successfully shaped policy and public discourse, revealing a strategic mastery of public relations and institutional penetration. By presenting themselves as legitimate, quote, reformers or scholarly think tanks, they effectively mainstreamed ideas rooted in racial exclusion. This mainstreaming indicates a movement not solely dependent on its overt messaging, but also on its ability to create a diverse organizational front and find allies across the political spectrum. This phenomenon highlights a concerning trend where seemingly neutral arguments mask underlying racial motivations, allowing extremist ideologies to gain traction in mainstream discourse. A critical direct organizational link exists through Yvette Carnell, a co-founder of the ADOS movement, who previously served as a board member of Progressives for Immigration Reform. Progressives for Immigration Reform is known as a, quote, fake progressive organization that received aid from white supremacist and eugenics supporter John Tanton. This connection highlights a direct pathway for Tanton's anti-immigrant network to potentially influence or align with movements like ADOS. The Tanton network historically pursued strategies to broaden the appeal of immigration restriction beyond traditional conservative or white nationalist circles, including documented attempts to forge alliances with environmentalists and other groups perceived as progressive. The existence of an organization named Progressives for Immigration Reform, coupled with its documented aid from John Tanton and Carnell's involvement, points to a deliberate and sophisticated strategy by the Tanton network. This fact suggests an effort to create or co-opt ostensibly progressive fronts to advance their anti-immigrant agenda, thereby diversifying the voices advocating for immigration restriction and making it appear less ideologically monolithic. The term fake progressive is crucial here because it implies a strategic deception. Progressives for Immigration Reform presented itself with the progressive veneer while advancing an agenda, anti-immigration agenda, fundamentally aligned with Tanton's white nationalist and eugenics-driven movement. Carnell's direct involvement with such a group establishes a tangible, albeit indirect, link between the leadership of ADOS and the Tanton Network's broader strategy. The Tanton Network is not simply lobbying Congress, but actively shaping public discourse and influencing diverse social movements by cultivating individuals and organizations that can introduce or amplify anti-immigrant narratives within communities that might otherwise be resistant to them. This connection raises critical questions about autonomy and the potential manipulation of identity-based movements. It implies that the Tanton Network's influence is not limited to overt political lobbying, but extends to cultivating and leveraging individuals and organizations that can introduce or amplify anti-immigrant narratives within communities that might otherwise be resistant to them, thereby subtly expanding the reach of their agenda. Both ADOS, FBA, and the Tanton Group exhibit strong anti-immigrant stances. The Tanton Group explicitly seeks to reduce all immigration, particularly non-white immigration, within the stated goal of maintaining a white majority. ADOS and FBA, while primarily focused on reparations for U.S. descendants of slavery, advocate for policies that would remove black immigrants from affirmative action and limit visas for African immigrants. ADOS and FBA define themselves through a strict lineage, differentiating themselves from other black people, specifically immigrants, and advocating for exclusive benefits for their defined group. This othering of immigrants by FBA is similar to the MAGA program. The most profound ideological parallel between these entities is the shared principle of exclusivity and nativism. While Tanton's network overtly pursues a white nationalist agenda, ADOS and FBA seek to prioritize a specific black lineage. Both employ a fundamental framework that distinguishes insiders based on specific criteria like European ancestry or U.S. slave lineage from outsiders, immigrants, or those from unspecified lineages. Shared exclusionary logic, particularly the othering of immigrants, creates a fertile ground for convergence where arguments against immigration, even if for different stated reasons, reinforce broader anti-immigrant sentiment. The Tanton Group aims to maintain a European-American majority by severely restricting non-white immigration and establishing a clear us versus them based on racial origin. Similarly, ADOS and FBA aim to prioritize, quote, American descendants of slavery or foundational black Americans over black immigrants for reparations and other benefits, advocating for policies that disadvantage immigrants. This division also creates an us versus them dynamic based on lineage and ancestral experience within the U.S. Both frameworks rely on creating distinct in-groups and out-groups based on ancestry or origin, and both advocate for policies that restrict or disadvantage the out-group in some manner. This shared logic of exclusion is a powerful ideological parallel. Regardless of the group prioritized, achieving that prioritization through anti-immigrant policies and the othering of non-lineage-based groups aligns. This logic of exclusion means that even if ADOS and FBA are not directly promoting white nationalism, their anti-immigrant rhetoric and policies can inadvertently serve the Tanton group's broader goals by contributing to an overall climate of anti-immigrant sentiment and reduce the number of non-white immigrants entering the United States. The explicit comparison of FBA's stance to the MAGA program further underscores this convergence. This convergence highlights how different social movements, even those at odds, can find common ground on specific policies like immigration restriction due to a shared underlying exclusionary principle. The political landscape is complex and allows for the diffusion of nativist ideas across diverse ideological spectrums, potentially weakening broader coalitions for social justice. Critics explicitly describe ADOS as a disinformation operation that serves the interests of the political right by discouraging black people from voting. Similarly, FBA tactics lean toward conservative ideology and promote black voter apathy. The Tanton Group, with its significant influence in the Trump administration, actively works to implement policies to restrict immigration as much as possible. There is a strategic alignment where the internal divisions and voter disengagement fostered by ADOS and FBA movements indirectly benefit the Tanton Group's anti-immigrant agenda. By weakening the collective political power of black communities, which traditionally lean left and oppose restrictive immigration policies, these movements reduce opposition to the Tanton Network's goals. This strategic alignment with organizations that indirectly benefit from anti-immigrant policies suggests a sophisticated, multi-pronged approach to shaping policy and demographics. The Tanton Network's long-term goal of maintaining a white majority is served not only by direct anti-immigrant lobbying, but also by any movement that reduces the political efficacy of groups that might oppose this goal. The documented amplification of ADOS and FBA's divisive rhetoric by external actors further suggests a deliberate strategy to exploit these internal divisions for broader political outcomes. This tactic reveals a complex and covert nature of political influence, where independent movements become leverage to achieve outcomes that benefit external, ideologically distinct actors. It underscores the importance of analyzing not just the stated goals, but also the practical effects and strategic alignments of various socio-political movements, particularly concerning their impact on democratic participation and community solidarity. There is a complex web of relationships and convergences between the American Descendants of Slavery movement, the foundational Black Americans concept, and the Tanton Group. A direct organizational link is established with Yvette Carnell, a co-founder of ADOS, who served on the board of Progressives for Immigration Reform, an entity explicitly supported by John Tanton. This connection suggests a deliberate strategy by the Tanton network to cultivate ostensibly progressive fronts to advance its agenda. Beyond this direct link, significant ideological parallels are evident. Both ADOS and FBA and the Tanton Group exhibit strong anti-immigrant stances. While the Tanton Group's motivation is rooted in white nationalism and the desire to maintain a European American majority, ADOS and FBA focused on lineage-based reparations for descendants of slavery, advocate for policies that disadvantage black immigrants. This shared principle of exclusivity and nativism, which distinguishes insiders and outsiders based on ancestry or origin, creates a common ground where arguments against immigration, regardless of their stated rationale, reinforce broader anti-immigrant sentiment. The strategic implications of these convergences are substantial. Critics consistently describe ADOS and FBA as movements that, whether intentional or not, serve the interests of the political right by discouraging black voter participation and fracturing black communities. This internal division and potential voter disengagement within black communities indirectly benefit the Tanton Group's anti-immigrant agenda by weakening collective political opposition. The documented amplification of ADOS and FBA rhetoric by bots online or trolls further suggests a coordinated effort to exploit these divisions for broader political outcomes, aligning with the Tanton Network's long-term goals of shaping demographics and policy. The relationships between ADOS, FBA, and the Tanton Network have implications for social justice, immigration policy, and racial dynamics in the United States. The Tanton Group, with its origins in white nationalism and eugenics, has effectively mainstreamed anti-immigrant sentiment by adopting a sophisticated strategy that includes establishing a network of seemingly diverse organizations and leveraging indirect influences. This approach allows extremist ideologies to gain traction in mainstream discourse by framing their objectives through seemingly neutral lenses such as environmentalism or economic impact. The phenomena observed with ADOS and FBA illustrates how identity politics, even when rooted in legitimate historical grievances, such as the demands for reparations for slavery, can be exploited or co-opted. When movements prioritize a narrow lineage-based identity and advocate for exclusionary policies, they risk fragmenting communities and inadvertently serving agendas fundamentally at odds with broader social justice efforts. The othering of immigrants can create divisions that weaken collective power and make communities more susceptible to external political manipulation. Ultimately, these complex interactions highlight the intricate and often covert ways political influence operates. They underscore the critical need for rigorous analysis of movements, practical effects, and strategic alignments beyond their stated goals to fully understand their impact on democratic participation, community solidarity, and the ongoing debates around immigration and racial identity in the United States. Now, you see how the landscape of social and political movements is not always straightforward, and vigilance is required to discern how different forces might converge to shape national policy and demographic realities.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such an extent that you bleach? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
'Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan!
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.